Lila Parker had always considered herself the responsible one. Growing up in Seattle with her younger sister Emma, she had taken on the role of protector, confidant, and occasional problem solver. Life was comfortable, predictable, and layered with the quiet joys of a close-knit family. She worked at a local marketing firm, lived in a cozy apartment downtown, and spent most of her weekends with Emma or with a few close friends. Lila liked this rhythm. She liked knowing where she stood. But recently, something had shifted, a quiet tension in her heart that she didn't fully understand at first. It began with Ethan Miller, a family friend who had recently moved back to the city. Lila had known Ethan for years. He had been around in childhood gatherings, birthday parties, and summer outings. He had always been polite, funny, and kind, the sort of person who could light up a room without trying. But lately, Lila noticed something different. When they were together, she felt an unspoken electricity, a pull she could neither explain nor resist. Every glance, every word, every laugh shared in the quiet corners of conversation carried an intimacy she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't physical attraction in a shallow sense, it was deeper. A magnetic pull toward understanding, connection, and closeness that felt both thrilling and frightening. The problem, however, was complicated. Emma adored Ethan too. She had always admired him, the way he listened, the way he made everyone feel seen. The subtle humor that came out at the right moment. And Lila couldn't deny the possessiveness stirring inside her. She didn't act on it yet, but every fiber of her being felt that Ethan was already hers. That she had a claim on him that even her sister didn't know existed. It was a quiet, secret longing that made her stomach twist, her heart race, and her mind spin with possibilities she wasn't ready to face openly. One Friday evening, after a casual dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown, Lila and Ethan found themselves walking along the waterfront. The air was crisp and cool, the city lights reflecting in the gentle waves, casting a golden shimmer across the wooden pier. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, meandering from memories of childhood adventures to current hobbies and mutual acquaintances. Lila laughed at his jokes, smiled at his gentle teasing, and noticed the way he subtly mirrored her gestures. A small touch of attention that made her heart tighten. "I feel like we never really talk like this anymore," Ethan said quietly, his eyes catching hers under the soft glow of the street lamps. "Just you and me. No distractions." Lila nodded, feeling a rush of warmth and uncertainty. "Yeah, just us," she repeated, though inside she felt the weight of all the unspoken truths pressing against her chest. She wanted to tell him, to confess that he was hers in some unnameable, undeniable way. But she held back, savoring the secret, holding on to the intimacy that existed in those quiet moments alone. The city around them hummed with life-distant traffic, muffled voices, the faint sound of music from a nearby cafe, but in that moment, it felt as if time had slowed. Lila was acutely aware of every gesture, the way Ethan tilted his head when he listened, the subtle softness in his voice, the rare fleeting touches that lingered just a little too long. It was intoxicating, thrilling, and dangerous all at once. She reminded herself to stay composed, to enjoy the closeness without overstepping boundaries, knowing that the line between friendship and something more was fragile. Meanwhile, Lila couldn't ignore the shadow of anticipation. She knew Emma was likely planning to see Ethan soon, that her sister's admiration could grow into something more, and that the moment of truth, the moment when Emma might realize her own feelings, was inevitable. Lila felt a complicated mix of guilt and excitement. She loved her sister deeply, but she also loved the connection she had with Ethan. She knew that once Emma noticed, the delicate balance would be disturbed, and the situation could change forever. As they reached the end of the pier, Lila's mind raced. How could she navigate this without hurting anyone? Could she enjoy these stolen moments of closeness without fear? And how long could she keep her feelings hidden before the truth inevitably surfaced? She understood with a pang of both delight and apprehension that this secret was fragile. Every shared laugh, every lingering glance, and every soft word added weight to a truth she wasn't yet ready to reveal. Ethan looked at her then, a softness in his gaze that made Leela's chest ache with longing. "You've been different lately." "In a good way," he said, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Closer, more present. I like it." The simplicity of the words hit her with unexpected force. She felt a surge of emotion she struggled to contain. The night, the city, and the subtle intimacy of the moment made her heart race. She wanted to tell him that he was hers always had been, in ways that couldn't yet be spoken aloud. But instead, she remained quiet, letting the warmth of his attention wash over her, savoring the closeness that felt both private and sacred. It wasn't only desire that drove her feelings. It was a quiet certainty, a recognition that the bond she shared with Ethan had been growing beneath the surface for years. She had watched him, laughed with him, confided in him, and now, in the stillness of the waterfront night, she realized that what she felt was more than admiration or friendship. It was possessive in the gentlest way, protective, intimate, and full of longing. She wanted him close, wanted his attention, wanted this quiet connection to remain untouched until the world, specifically her, sister, was ready to see it. The walk back to their cars was quiet, filled with soft glances and gentle smiles. Lila's thoughts continued to swirl, mixing happiness with apprehension. She understood that the bond she shared with Ethan wasn't meant to hurt anyone. It was something precious, delicate, and entirely her own for now. But she also knew that the moment of reckoning, when Emma would inevitably notice, when the balance of relationships would shift, was approaching. When they said goodbye, Ethan reached for her hand in a brief, lingering touch. It wasn't bold or intrusive, but it carried meaning. Leela felt a jolt of electricity at the contact, a confirmation that what she felt wasn't imagined. He hadn't said the words aloud, but his actions told her what she already knew. He valued her presence, her attention, and the quiet connection that had been growing for months. Walking back to her apartment, Lila's mind replayed every moment of the evening. She thought about Ethan's smile, his soft tone, and the way he looked at her, not like a friend, not like a casual acquaintance, but with the warmth and subtle attention that hinted at something deeper. She felt a quiet thrill at the secret she held, the knowledge that Ethan was hers in some unspoken way, and that the realization of this truth by her sister be a turning point she both dreaded and anticipated. Back in her apartment, Lila reflected on the complexity of her feelings. She wasn't proud of the possessiveness she felt, nor of the thrill she experienced in holding a secret. But she couldn't deny it. Her heart, her mind, and every subtle glance shared with Ethan confirmed it. He was hers, even if only quietly, secretly, for now. She understood that this secret was fragile, beautiful, and fleeting. Every interaction, every laugh, every lingering moment carried the weight of unspoken truths. And as Lila lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she knew that the days ahead would be complicated. Emma's admiration for Ethan, the inevitable discoveries, and the delicate balance of love and family would soon challenge her. Yet, in that quiet moment, Lila felt a strange peace. She had recognized her heart, understood her longing, and embraced the intimate connection that was hers alone for now. Soft hook for part 2. Lila had kept her feelings hidden, but the arrival of her sister in Ethan's world was inevitable. The next encounter promised to change everything, forcing Leela to confront the delicate balance between love, family, and the secret. The following week, Lila felt a quiet anticipation building inside her. The secret she had held close to her heart, the subtle bond with Ethan, had grown stronger. Each message, each call, and each shared glance now carried more meaning. Lila couldn't help but notice how much she longed for moments alone with him. Even as she dreaded the inevitable collision with Emma, she loved her sister deeply. But the thought of sharing Ethanor having Emma unknowingly fall into the same orbit filled her with an anxious thrill. It began on a Friday afternoon when Ethan sent a casual text. "Want to grab coffee after work? Just us, maybe chat about the project." Lila's heart skipped a beat. The wording was casual, innocent to anyone else. but to her it was loaded with potential. She accepted immediately, feeling a surge of excitement. The plan was simple: coffee, conversation, and the quiet intimacy of shared attention. But underneath it, Lila knew she was savoring the secret connection that she alone understood. At the cafe, they found a quiet corner by the window. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the glass, casting a warm glow over the table. Ethan smiled as she approached, a softness in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. Lila returned his smile, but her mind was racing. How much could she reveal without overstepping boundaries? How much could she enjoy this closeness before her sister became aware? Their conversation began casually, discussing work and small updates on mutual friends. But soon, the atmosphere shifted. Lila noticed the way Ethan leaned slightly closer when she spoke, how his attention remained fully on her, and how the familiar warmth between them wrapped around her like a protective cloak. She felt seen, understood, and quietly treasured. These were emotions she had rarely experienced with anyone else, and it both thrilled and terrified her as they talked. Lila became aware of the subtle tension of holding her secret. Every glance, every small laugh carried more meaning than it might have to someone else. She knew that Ethan likely did not see her possessiveness, nor her quiet anticipation of Emma discovering their connection. But to Lila, these unspoken feelings made the moments richer, more intense, and more intoxicating. "I've missed talking like this," Ethan said, his tone casual but warm. "Feels like we can really just be ourselves." Lila's chest tightened at his words. "Yeah, just us." She echoed the phrase, now a mantra of sorts, a quiet affirmation of the bond they shared. She wanted to tell him everything, to reveal the depth of her feelings, but the timing wasn't right. For now, she would enjoy the closeness, the laughter, the shared silence that felt like its own kind of intimacy. The coffee lingered between them like a small oasis of calm. Outside, the city bustled with life, unaware of the private storm of emotions brewing inside their quiet corner. Lila found herself fascinated by the subtleties of Ethan's mannerisms, the way he smiled when he laughed, the slight crinkle at the corner of his eyes, the ease with which he made her feel safe and appreciated. These were the nuances she had cherished for years, and now they felt like threads weaving a secret tapestry meant only for her. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cafe floor, Lila felt a sudden wave of realization. The moments she had with Ethan were finite. The secret she held was fragile. Soon Emma would notice the subtle glances, the quiet attention, and perhaps the closeness that Lila had been cultivating. It was inevitable. But instead of fear, Lila felt a thrill, the knowledge that this was hers. Quietly, privately, until the time came for the truth to emerge. After coffee, they walked slowly through the city streets, the evening air cool and refreshing. Ethan seemed relaxed, chatting about mundane things, yet every word, every gesture carried a subtle intimacy that made Lila's heart race. She noticed the way he occasionally brushed against her hand, a fleeting touch that lingered longer in her memory than it did in reality. It was a delicate dance of closeness and restraint, one that both excited and terrified her. They arrived at a small park near the waterfront, where the city lights reflected off the calm water, creating a serene, almost magical atmosphere. Ethan leaned against the railing, looking out at the reflections. Lila stood beside him, the quiet space between them filled with unspoken emotions. She realized in that moment that her feelings were no longer just admiration or subtle attraction. They were deeply possessive. A quiet certainty that Ethan belonged in a special, private place in her life. Ethan turned to her then, catching her gaze. "You've been different lately," he said softly. "Closer, more connected. I notice it, and I like it." The simplicity of his words hit her like a gentle wave. She felt a mix of joy, longing, and quiet fear. He had noticed the subtle changes, the unspoken closeness, and it validated the feelings she had kept hidden for so long. Lila wanted to respond with equal honesty, to confess that he was hers in a way that could not yet be spoken aloud. But she held back, savoring the intimacy, letting the moment exist in its fragile perfection. Later, as they walked back toward the cafe to part ways, Lila felt a sense of calm determination. She knew that soon Emma would become more aware that the delicate balance of affection, loyalty, and secrecy would be tested. Yet she also understood that these moments, the quiet laughter, the gentle touches, the unspoken understanding were hers to cherish for now. They were pieces of a puzzle that had been forming for years, finally falling into place in ways that felt both natural and inevitable. The week passed with a mix of anticipation and quiet preparation. Leela found herself observing Ethan more closely, noting his gestures, his expressions, and his interactions with her and others. She recognized the depth of his kindness, the subtle ways he made her feel cherished, and the quiet assurance that this bond, however unspoken, was something rare and precious. At the same time, she watched Emma, noting the innocent admiration her sister had for Ethan. Lila felt a pang of guilt, tempered by the thrill of holding a secret that only she fully understood. One Saturday evening, the sisters were at home together, preparing for a small family dinner. Lila noticed the way Emma's eyes lit up at a message from Ethan, the way she casually mentioned a conversation they had had that day. The realization struck Leela. Emma was beginning to sense the closeness, the attention, the subtle emotional thread connecting her sister and Ethan. Lila's heart raced, but she remained calm, hiding her emotions beneath a mask of casual conversation. She knew that soon the moment of truth would come, and the delicate web of feelings would begin to unravel in ways that could change everything later that night. Lila sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on the week's events. The secret bond with Ethan was no longer just a quiet longing. It had become a central part of her emotional life, a fragile but thrilling connection that she cherished. She understood that the moments of closeness, the laughter, and the shared glances were precious precisely because they were temporary, private, and delicately balanced. She also understood that soon the veil would lift, and the reality of her feelings and perhaps Ethan's would have to be faced openly as Lila drifted off to sleep. She felt a quiet certainty. Ethan was hers. In a way that could not yet be revealed, a secret held close to her heart. She also knew that the future held challenges Emma's feelings, the inevitable questions, and the shifting dynamics of love and family. Yet, in that quiet moment, Lila allowed herself to simply feel exhilaration, longing, and the delicate joy of a secret connection that was hers alone. For now, the stage was set for what was to come. Lila's secret, the unspoken bond with Ethan, and the growing awareness of her sister created a tension that promised emotional complexity, heartfelt romance, and quiet drama. The next encounter would challenge the balance, reveal hidden emotions, and force Lila to confront the fragile line between love, loyalty, and desire. Soft hook for part 3. The closeness between Leela and Ethan could no longer remain hidden. With Emma beginning to sense the bond, Lila would soon face choices that tested her love, loyalty, and the delicate secret she had nurtured. The next chapter promised revelations, emotional challenges, and the unfolding of a heartfelt, romantic. The days after the cafe and waterfront meetings were filled with quiet tension for Lila. She could feel the change in the air, the subtle awareness that Emma was beginning to notice Ethan in a way she hadn't before. It wasn't dramatic or confrontational. It was in the little things. The way Emma's eyes lit up when she mentioned Ethan, the casual mentions of his humor, his attentiveness, or the small gestures he had shown her. Lila felt a mixture of apprehension and thrill, knowing that the secret she had held so carefully was slowly being discovered. One evening, Lila invited Ethan over under the guise of helping her with a small work project. She had spent the day preparing, making the apartment cozy, setting the table with warm lighting and soft background music. When Ethan arrived, he carried his usual charm, his smile bright but gentle. The air between them carried a familiarity, a quiet intimacy, but also the tension of anticipation. Either of them could fully ignore the unspoken emotions that had been growing over the past weeks as they worked together, organizing documents and discussing ideas. Lila found herself stealing glances at him. Every movement, every subtle expression spoke volumes to her. She noticed the quiet attentiveness in his eyes, the way he leaned slightly closer when she explained something, the small, almost imperceptible touches when handing her a paper or pointing to a detail on the screen. It wasn't overt, but to Lila it was everything. Each gesture reinforced the quiet, possessive feeling she had harbored all along. Ethan was hers in a way that she couldn't yet voice. And the thought thrilled her and terrified her. Simultaneously, the tension was heightened when Emma unexpectedly decided to stop by. Lila's heart raced as she glanced at the clock and realized there wasn't enough time to warn Ethan. She could feel the emotions building inside her, the protectiveness, the anticipation, the careful balancing act between sisterly love and personal desire. When Emma arrived, she was cheerful and unaware of the undercurrent in the room. She greeted Lila with a warm hug and then noticed Ethan. Her eyes widened slightly, a smile forming on her lips. "Oh, hi, Ethan. I didn't expect to see you here." Lila's stomach twisted. This was the moment she had both anticipated and feared. She had been waiting for Emma to find out, to notice, and now it was happening. But she remained composed, keeping her own emotions in check, watching carefully as Ethan greeted Emma politely yet warmly. His natural charm and attentiveness didn't go unnoticed by Emma, and Lila saw the subtle sparks of admiration forming in her sister's eyes. The evening unfolded with careful balance. Lila watched the interactions, noting every glance, every smile, and every small gesture. She realized that the dynamic between Ethan and Emma was innocent and friendly, but also subtly charged with curiosity and admiration. Lila felt a surge of protective possessiveness, but she reminded herself that Ethan's attention and feelings were theirs to navigate together. She couldn't control every perception, but she could maintain her connection with him through the quiet intimacy they had built over weeks of understanding and shared moments. Later, as the evening wound down, Ethan helped Lila clear some items from the table while Emma stepped out to answer a phone call. The apartment felt suddenly quiet, the kind of quiet that allowed emotions to surface unguarded. Ethan looked at Lila, his expression soft, sincere, and unspoken. "I feel like we're walking a delicate line," he said quietly. "I also feel close to you in ways I can't quite explain." Lila's heart swelled. This was the confirmation she had longed for, not in words, but in acknowledgement. "I know," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I've felt it too. Quietly, secretly, for weeks. And I want this. You, for now, and maybe beyond." Ethan reached out and took her hand gently. The contact was brief, tender, and charged with meaning. Lila felt a wave of warmth and certainty. In that moment, all the anticipation, the careful waiting, and the quiet possessiveness found its place in mutual understanding. They didn't need to speak everything aloud. The connection was clear, intimate, and undeniably theirs. Emma returned, aware of the small revelation that had just occurred, and the three of them resumed conversation as if nothing had changed. Lila felt a subtle satisfaction, a quiet victory in knowing that her bond with Ethan was solid, even as her sister unknowingly observed. There was no malice, no conflict, just the delicate tension of unspoken truths and the excitement of emotional closeness. Over the next few days, Lila noticed subtle shifts in Emma's behavior. Her sister's admiration for Ethan became more apparent, her casual mentions tinged with curiosity, and her smiles carrying a faint warmth that suggested deeper feelings. Lila watched quietly, experiencing the thrill of secrecy and the protective instinct she felt for both Ethan and her own emotional territory. She understood that the delicate balance of relationships required careful navigation, patience, and emotional intelligence. Lila and Ethan continued to spend time together, alone and in the presence of others, always maintaining the subtle, unspoken intimacy that had grown between them. They shared quiet dinners, walks along the waterfront, and thoughtful conversations late into the night. Each moment reinforced their bond, a careful layering of trust, affection, and emotional resonance. Lila found herself more confident, more patient, and more aware of the complexities of love, family, and loyalty. She was learning to navigate desires, protect connections, and savor the intimacy that was theirs alone for now one evening. During a quiet dinner at home, Ethan leaned slightly closer to Lila across the table. "I feel like we're on the verge of something important," he said softly, his gaze steady. "Something worth holding on to, quietly, carefully." Lila felt a rush of emotion. "I know," she replied, her voice calm but full of meaning. "And I want that too. But we have to be careful, not just for us, but for Emma. She's important to both of us, in different ways." Ethan nodded, understanding the subtle truth in her words. They didn't need to speak explicitly about possessiveness or secrecy. It was understood in the careful glances, the gentle touches, and the shared silence. The connection was theirs, quietly, deeply, and entirely. The tension of waiting, the thrill of secret understanding, and the protective awareness of her sister created a rich emotional landscape for Lila. She realized that love was not simply about passion or attraction, it was about understanding, empathy, patience, and the careful nurturing of bonds that could withstand time and circumstance. She loved Ethan, yes, but she also loved the quiet complexity of the situation, the challenge of maintaining balance, and the slow, delicate unfolding of emotional intimacy. Days turned into weeks, and the dynamic continued to evolve. Lila found joy in small gestures, the subtle affirmations of closeness, and the quiet reassurance of Ethan's attention. She also observed Emma's growing awareness with a mixture of apprehension and satisfaction, knowing that the revelation would eventually come, but trusting that the bond she shared with Ethan was strong enough to withstand it. The thrill of anticipation, the complexity of emotion, and the quiet satisfaction of mutual understanding became the rhythm of Lila's life. A dance of love, loyalty, and subtle possession. Finally, one weekend, Emma made a casual remark that hinted she was piecing things together. "You two spend a lot of time together lately," she said, half smiling, half curious. Lila felt a flutter of anxiety, but also a surge of excitement. The moment she had been waiting for was approaching. She realized that the careful balance she had maintained, the quiet possessiveness she had nurtured, and the tender bond with Ethan would soon face a subtle test of truth and understanding. That night, Lila and Ethan walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting off the calm waves just as they had weeks before. "Sooner or later," Ethan said, his voice quiet but sincere, "she's going to notice. And when she does, I want you to know this Susit's always yours. Always mine, but waiting for the right moment to be seen." Lila smiled, her heart full. The secret, the thrill, the quiet intimacy, all of it had led to this moment of understanding. She knew that love was patient, careful, and nuanced. She also knew that the revelation, when it came, would change dynamics. But the foundation of trust, respect, and shared emotion would remain unshaken as they paused at the edge of the pier. Looking at the reflections in the water, Lila felt a deep sense of certainty. Ethan was hers, not through force or claim, but through shared understanding, mutual affection, and the quiet resonance of emotions that had grown over time. And when Emma discovered the subtle truth, the bonds of family, love, and respect would guide the way, ensuring that hearts remained intact even as secrets unfolded. The chapter of waiting, longing, and careful navigation had reached its quiet climax. Lila had learned to balance desire, protectiveness, and empathy. She had nurtured a secret bond, savored intimate moments, and prepared herself for the inevitable revelations. Love, she realized, was not always about immediate possession. It was about patience, understanding, and the quiet certainty that what was meant to be would endure. Soft ending hook. The time of revelation was near. Emma's curiosity, Ethan's attentiveness, and Lila's quiet possessiveness had all converged into a delicate, emotionally charged moment. Soon, truths would emerge, emotions would